if someone told me I had to choose a life without books or a life without people, I think that would be a really hard choice to make in general for a lot of reasons. But I definitely enjoy books quite a bit, and I would have a very different life if I didn't have books with me or around me. But if you were to ask my 13-year-old self, she probably would have said, I prefer books 100%. And not knowing about my autism was also very difficult, but I don't blame my mom. She was very worried, not just about like the stigma of being autistic or of having a disability. She was really worried, that I'm black, multiracial, and a
Mm,
girl, and she felt very concerned already for me going into the school system. And in her mind, she didn't want to add anything else, but she kept it on her mind. And so when I went into kindergarten, she had her eye out kind of. She was like really closely observing me in that age, but because I did well academically, she thought that that meant that I couldn't be autistic because there was so much, there still is so much false information out there about what autism. If an autistic person is doing well, this is a strange thing. If later on you start doing well, then people will be like they outgrew their autism. They don't have autism anymore. And so it leads to this really strange idea that like autistic people can't be happy, that we
nope.
can't live lives that are fulfilling for us. And yeah, I completely disagree with that. Of course, autism is a spectrum disability, so there are, different kinds of autistics. No two autistics are alike, and there are different challenges that each autistic person will face. But I do believe that regardless of this diversity of the spectrum, I do think that each individual autistic person can find happiness, joy, and fulfillment in their lives. The father of the autistic protagonist said, I want my child to be happy. I just want him to be happy in a way that I can understand. And that really, really resonated with me because I often feel like when I am my happiest, people think that I'm doing something wrong or I'm doing something weird or it's abnormal. And that's frustrating because I can find happiness. It's just that other people don't recognize it. I often feel most unhappy when I'm trying to strive for the things that other people think will make me happy. Like when I'm trying to live up to other folks' expectations of happiness, like how a social life should look, how I should spend my time, how I should prioritize my income and different things like that. If I start doing those things, then I start to get really unhappy. At the same time, even be showing like I accept myself, I have compassion for myself, and that I think can really change the game, especially when families and parents of autistic children, they're getting such a different narrative from their doctors, from medical professionals. I think it can make a whole world of difference for those folks when they see autistic adults and autistic teens too, who are like, no, I'm okay, and like this is what makes me happy, and like I'm different, and I'm okay with this, and can you just embrace difference? I think that can make a big difference for those families who are maybe just found out that their child is autistic. For what people think of me when they meet me, because they usually just think, oh, she can't be autistic because autism looks XYZ way, not realizing that autism can be an invisible disability. I know that I have very intense sensory processing differences because when those people find out how hard of a time I'm having, they are just like shocked. Like they can't believe it. And I have also talked to some other autistic folks where I'm like, aren't you in like severe pain right now due to these sensory things? And they're like, no, I'm good. And I'm like, whoa. So that's another point to like the diversity of the spectrum. But depersonalization, derealization disorder, maladaptive daydreaming, they are not a part of autism. They can co-occur with autism. And in my case, they co-occurred coping, like negative coping strategies. So my brain was trying to cope with the lack of supports, intense negative situations I was consistently put in that were not supportive of my social and sensory differences. Another characteristic of maladaptive daydreaming is speaking and moving while daydreaming. So I would like talk out the daydream or like move my body in time with the daydream. And these daydreams tend to be very vivid and very complex, and they can be a kind of like world building. So I would follow like a storyline all the way through for sometimes like a couple weeks. That was like a single daydream
Weeks? Really?
storyline.
Yeah. Wait.
There's like different states of being in a daydream. Like there's the fully immersive state, and then there's like an in and out, like, oh, I'm still thinking about the characters or thinking about this element of the daydream, but I am able to like talk with other people and like go to the bathroom and like depersonalization is when I no longer feel like I'm in my body and I have out of body experiences. So I'll view the world from like a third person perspective or like an omniscient perspective. It is very, it's something that people have every once in a blue moon, like I said, where you're like, whoa, that was kind of weird. And be like, that was like a really strange moment. But for me, it was something that I was experiencing quite frequently. So I would just be like walking back to my dorm room in college, and I would feel like I was up as high as the moon and like watching the whole and there was a moment in therapy. I remember one of my therapists said to me that we could explore the depersonalization, the derealization, and talk about ways for me to do it less, to experience it less. But she said to me, but you're gonna have to want that. Like you're gonna have to want to depersonalize and less and to derealize less. Like you're gonna have to want to find a different kind of coping strategy. Otherwise, we're not going to be able to actually work through this.
Hello, welcome to my podcast, Mics One JoeySooch. I am Joe Sooch, and I'll be giving a mic to Lauren. Lauren is a self-advocate autistic, multiracial, bisexual woman, also an author, blogger, and was a librarian. Do you feel more comfortable around books or people?
I feel more comfortable perhaps around books, unless we're talking about my safe people and like my best friends. I think if you were to ask me, would I rather be in a room full of books or a room full of strangers, I would definitely pick a room full of books. Even if it was a room full of people that I knew, I would probably still pick a room full of books. But for me, talking to someone one on one is a lot like reading a book. So if it's a person one on one, then that's nice as well. But if someone told me I had to choose a life without books or a life without people, I think that would be a really hard choice to make in general for a lot of reasons. But I definitely enjoy books quite a bit, and I would have a very different life if I didn't have books with me or around me. But if you were to ask my 13-year-old self, she probably would have said, I prefer books 100%.
Well, speaking of books and words, we talked earlier so we were talking earlier before this episode, and you say that you didn't want to talk for a long time because you burn out, which is understandable. So I came up with the idea to have a safe word. So what is one of your favorite words to use so we can use as your safe word for today?
Um, I guess we could use. I'm trying to not pick a word that we'll use today in the
Oh,
podcast, right? Because like I'll probably say a lot of my favorite words.
okay.
Maybe we can just pick the word Germany.
Okay, Germany it is. We'll go with Germany. I do know that's where you were born, right?
Yeah.
We'll
Nice
try to,
research.
yeah, we'll try to avoid Germany. So since you say you have a lot of favorite words, so what are some of your favorite words?
Oh, things like fairies, or that was the first one that came to mind was fairies. And then I was like, oh, I can't use that because I write about
No, but
fairies.
I know that I'll bring that up later. But so we got fairies.
Maybe like moon. I don't know. Now I'm on the spot, so it's hard for me to think about all of them. But the first word I thought of was fairies, and so then I thought, oh, I can't do that word. But yeah, fairies, Neverlands. Those are probably some of my favorite words.
Okay, okay. I'm loving it. So I have here you were self-diagnosed with autism at 22 and professionally diagnosed at 23. It is more common for women to be late diagnosed with autism. Your mom even thought you might be autistic since a toddler, but didn't want you to be stigmatized in school. Do you have any hate towards your mom, or do you understand why she did what she did?
Yeah, I don't have any hate towards my mom with regards to not pursuing a diagnosis. For me, I was born in the early 90s, and I think that in a lot of ways, and I've also heard from other autistic folks as well, that in a lot of ways, if I had been diagnosed, it's not like I would have received very autistic centered and supportive therapies or they refer to it probably as treatment at that time. Of course, not getting supports was really hard for me as a kid, especially as a preteen and a teen. And not knowing about my autism was also very difficult. But I don't blame my mom. She was very worried, not just about like the stigma of being autistic or of having a disability. She was really worried, that I'm black, multiracial, and a
Mm,
girl. And she felt very concerned already for me going into the school system. And in her mind, she didn't want to add anything else, but she kept it on her mind. And so when I went into kindergarten, she had her eye out kind of. She was like really closely observing me in that age, but because I did well academically, she thought that that meant that I couldn't be autistic because there was so much, there still is so much false information out there about what autism is, or this idea that it's only represented in one way. Like, of course, there are autistic folks with intellectual disabilities, but not all autistic folks have intellectual disabilities, and she didn't know that. So when I started doing well in school, she thought, "Oh, there's no way," and so I really can't blame her. She didn't have adequate information, and she was also doing it with the best of intentions. It's hard to be a parent, I think.
hmm No, I totally 100% agree with you. I think it's, yeah, I think you hit the nail on the head that misinformation was the big factor and all of that. And then look at you now. You have 95,000 followers. You're spreading great autism traits and what to look for and like really helping the community out. Like you're literally being one of the pioneers in helping the future generations of autism kids or even future parents that are just listening to you and know what to look for in their kids. And that's really awesome to hear because there's a lot of just from a podcaster point of view and just like interacting with so many people and the autism. I feel like there's a huge battle in the autism community, which is very, very strange. I don't see it with any other diagnosis that much. Like there's, there's people that will go like, oh, we should end autism and, autism is bad and all that. And then you have like the other half is like, hey, we should embrace us and we're okay. And like, yes, life is shitty and just going on your social media, life has been shit to you growing up, but like now I'm not gonna put my words in your mouth, but it's like it's okay now. Yes, I have my struggles still, but life can still be possible. It's still harder, but it can be possible. You just might have to do things a little differently, and you have to define your groove as such.
Yeah, definitely. I think that, and thank you, by the way. That's very kind what you said about my social media platform. I really appreciate that. And responding to what more that you said, I do think that there is a lot of information out there that autistic children and children with disabilities in general, like they will be unhappy, they won't live happy lives, And then if an autistic person is doing well, this is a strange thing. If later on you start doing well, then people be like they outgrew their autism. They don't have autism anymore. And so it leads to this really strange idea that like autistic people can't be happy, that we
Nope.
can't live lives that are fulfilling for us. And yeah, I completely disagree with that. Of course, there is autism is a spectrum disability, so there are, different kinds of autistics. No two autistics are alike, and there are different challenges that each autistic person will face, but I do believe that regardless of this diversity of the spectrum, I do think that each individual autistic person can find happiness, joy, and fulfillment in their lives. And to think that an autistic child, when they're diagnosed with autism, that means, oh, that means they won't have a happy life. I think that has to do with that stigma, with that idea that there's only one way to be happy and that success and joy looks only a specific way. I actually watched this really funny mockumentary about autism the other day called "Satan Cured My Autism." It's a very funny documentary, very satirical, and there's this one part in it where the father of the autistic protagonist said, "I want my child to be happy. I just want him to be happy in a way that I can understand." And that really, really resonated with me because I often feel like when I am my happiest, people think that I'm doing something wrong or I'm doing something weird or it's abnormal. And that's frustrating because I can find happiness. It's just that other people don't recognize it.
That's like, fuck them. Like, come on, really? Like, everyone's their individual selves. Like, if anything makes you happy, I don't know, like, and I don't know what you do differently that's different from everybody else, but, like, if it makes you happy, like, at the end of the day, it's all about you. Like, 99% of us around us doesn't matter. Like, we're not gonna see most of us, so you might as well do whatever makes you happy. Like, fuck everybody else.
Yeah.
Jeez.
I often feel most unhappy when I'm trying to strive for the things that other people think will make me happy. Like when I'm trying to live up to other folks' expectations of happiness, like how a social life should look, how I should spend my time, how I should prioritize my income and different things like that. If I start doing those things, then I start to get really unhappy. But if I want to, spend my free time and some of my money on, maybe just going to, I'm in my 30s, so a lot of people think it'd be really weird if I go to a 3-day, 4-day convention somewhere across the country to go see one of my special interest bands. And like, that's how I want to spend my holiday vacation. People are like, oh, but you should spend your vacation to go see family. You should spend your vacation to go do this or do that. And I'm like, that will not make me happy. If I do that for my vacation, I'll need a vacation to recover from it. And a lot of people say that they're like, I need a vacation to recover from my vacation. And I really do. Like, if I spend vacation with family or with lots of people, I can burn out and maybe have meltdowns or shut down or even have autistic catatonia and be unable to speak. And it's quite intense. And it's like if I had just, done what I wanted to do for vacation instead of what other people thought I should do for my vacation, I wouldn't be in this state. And that's a very small example. This is a very big topic, but that's a small example to maybe highlight this idea of like happiness can be different for other people.
I feel like no one can understand, like, your brain is just wired differently. Like, even if you're not autistic, some just like to go on vacation and go climb a mountain. Some just like to go to a beach and just sit on the beach. Like, everyone has their different things. Like, I love talking to people, and like that keeps me going. Like, you're the other way around. Like, you don't want to talk to people all the time. That you just want to be quiet, and that's totally fine. Like, everyone has their thing. Like, I don't understand, like, why people are giving you a hard time for that. You're not hurting anyone. It's like so strange though. Like why are people like hating the autistic community so much? Like give them a break. Like they're like cool people. Most
Yeah.
the ones I've met are really cool people, and like you're a new one to add to the list. Like I never met a bad autistic person ever.
I mean, I've met bad autistic people. That's because all people can be bad. I wouldn't say a person's bad. But I mean, like, I've met people I didn't get along with who are autistic, just like non
Hmm.
autistic people, because we all have different interests. But yeah, I think that there's this strange, this strange idea that autistic folks, either we are clearly going to be unhappy, or if we start telling people like, no, this makes me happy, I want to do it this way, please stop stigmatizing me, then people are like, why are you making this all about you? Why are you making excuses for your behavior? If you can talk to me about this, then you can behave differently than the way you're behaving. A lot of really strange things. I don't know. I think we're breaking down a lot of this stuff currently in our community, but it's going to take time, and there is no one right path. Like I said, the autistic community is extremely diverse, and so what works for me won't work for every single autistic person. And and yeah, so I think that there are concerns, real concerns about autistic folks not being able to get jobs, autistic folks not being able to gain access to intimate relationships when they want to. And I think those are real things to think about. I don't think that I think sometimes when we worry about those things, then we start thinking that we need to eradicate autism or we need to fix the autism because that can feel easier. Or maybe it's not. I mean, I don't think it's easy, but like that can feel easy to the mind of someone. Oh, let's eradicate the autism instead of let's change the way people think about how to approach those who are different, right? And it has to do with that pathologizing, that stigmatizing, and it's a long battle ahead. But my main hope, or not my main hope, but like my main mission and vision is to just like build up and foster self compassion and self acceptance within autistic folks and within the autistic community. And then from there, we can, like, at the same time, even be showing, like, I accept myself, I have compassion for myself. And that I think can really change the game, especially when families and parents of autistic children, they're getting such a different narrative from their doctors, from medical professionals. I think it can make a whole world of difference for those folks when they see autistic adults and autistic teens too, who are like, no, I'm okay, and like this is what makes me happy, and like I'm different, and I'm okay with this, and can you just embrace difference? I think that can make a big difference for those families who are maybe just found out that their child is autistic.
I think we can agree that like most kids are assholes just because they don't know any better. Do you find it better now that you're adult and more people are just more mature and dealing with things, or do you just think that it's just easier now that we're adults that since you also were diagnosed later, so do you think it's easier as an adult?
I definitely can say 100% that it's really hard to be a teen and be autistic, regardless of whether or not you know that you're autistic or you don't. And that was really, really difficult. Is it easier now? I'd say my life is much better now, but I don't know. I think I'm nervous to say that, correlation equals causation here. I think I'm doing one reason why I think I'm doing better right now, other than being able to know who I am, know myself as an autistic person, and find and build supports for myself around that. I think a big difference is the amount of autonomy and choice that I have and who I surround myself with. Right? So, like when I was a teenager in middle school and high school, I didn't have a choice around I didn't have a choice of who I was around, who I was surrounded by. Now, I meet someone who completely misinterprets all of my differences. A lot of people think that they might think that I'm cold, self centered, a bitch. A lot of, like, I've been thrown a lot of things. And then on the other side, they say that I'm like way too much, I talk too much. I'm like, which one am I? My goodness, y'all are just gonna pick whatever works for you in the moment to not like me, I guess. But now when I encounter folks who say those things or think those things, or I get that sense from them, right, I can just be like, oh, that's not a safe person, and like not talk to them anymore. When I was younger, I really couldn't do that. And of course, like in certain work environments, you don't have that much of a choice as an adult. But even in my work environments, like I could choose more of like who I would talk to more often than I could in like a school environment. So I do think that I can just protect myself more from folks who are hurtful and harmful. I still encounter hurtful, harmful people. I do. I still encounter some of those similar scenarios, and I experience really difficult ableist moments, but I can walk away from them faster. It still impacts me and it still hurts, but I can walk away from them faster.
Yeah, and
A
you,
really
it just
like
sounds
low
like you,
scale. Oh, sorry.
yeah, no, it just sounds like you have a woman with boundaries.
Yeah, I've learned how to set boundaries for sure. I don't think that I even thought I was allowed to when I was a teenager.
I think you really nailed it on the head that when you're growing up, you're forced to deal with people and you can't leave until school closes and the next day you go back and complete your degree and then now, yeah, you can really eliminate anybody you want. Like you can just not talk to your parents ever again. Like it gets a little dangerous, you know? Like you can really just go live in the woods and never come out again. Like it's yeah, but it's great. It's
Yeah.
great to hear that you have your boundaries and if people don't align with or really understand you as a person, then they don't deserve time in your life, and you just let them go down the path, and that's really great to hear.
Another thank you, and another boundary that I can set too is like sensory boundaries. Like you said, you just have to go to school and you have to be there all day. I don't have a choice on like my environment, but like now I can control my home environment, whereas I couldn't really control my home environment before. I have more control over my work environment. I don't have complete control, but I have more control over like my work environment than I had over my teachers' classrooms. Let's just say that.
Mm-hmm.
Like I was supposed to do like raise my hand and be like, teacher, could you take those things off the wall? They're overstimulating me. Not that I even had that self awareness at the time, but you just
Mm-hmm.
didn't really have that kind of control to set those boundaries. And that's been a huge thing for me. I get sensorially overwhelmed very easily. Not every autistic person has processing differences, and we all have them on different degrees. But I've noticed that I have some pretty intense sensory processing differences for, how do I say this? It sounds terrible, but for what people think of me when they meet me, because they usually just think, oh, she can't be autistic because autism looks XYZ way, not realizing that autism can be an invisible disability. I know that I have very intense sensory processing differences because when those people find out how hard of a time I'm having, they are just like shocked. Like they can't believe it. And I have also talked to some other autistic folks where I'm like, aren't you in like severe pain right now due to these sensory things? And they're like, no, I'm good. And I'm like, whoa. So that's another
Mm-hmm.
point to like the diversity of the spectrum. But being able to set those sensory boundaries has been a huge thing for me.
So let's talk about a book, the first book you have written, and it's called Boy at the Window, which touches on the topics of depersonalization slash derealization disorder and maladapt, I think I'm saying correct, maladaptive daydreaming, which you do have under control now. So before we talk about them, would you like me to describe the two, or would you like to describe it?
I can describe them because I think their medical definitions are pretty scary. So I would like to
Okay.
describe them, at least in how I understand them and how I
Yeah.
experience them. So
I just want to give you the choice
deperson.
because yeah, I do want to give you the choice because I know you're probably tired of saying the same thing over and over again. So if I can carry the weight in some way, I'm willing to do it. But
Most people don't talk to me about my novels. So I'm really excited to be able to talk about this. Most
okay, let's
folks,
do it. I'm ready.
they want to talk about
I'm
my social
listen.
media.
No, I want to hear about your. I never heard of this before, so I'm curious to hear what it is. And before you begin, is
Yeah.
it since you have the autism, does it like heighten does it heighten, or is it like different entities that just happen to be together?
Yeah, so depersonalization, derealization disorder, maladaptive daydreaming, they are not a part of autism. They can co occur with autism. And in my case, they co occurred coping, like negative coping strategies. So my brain was trying to cope with the lack of supports, intense negative situations I was consistently put in that were not supportive of my social and sensory differences. And so my brain and my body were trying to find ways to cope. And it started out with me coping through the daydreaming. Now, daydreaming isn't always maladaptive. Daydreaming is great. And I think that and I still daydream all the time, but I think that the big difference when things switched towards maladaptive daydreaming was, the amount of time that I spent in daydreams. So I at times could spend like 12 hours straight, like on a floor daydreaming. And I say on a floor, like I literally would be laying on a floor. And maybe I would probably get up to go to the bathroom or like grab a snack, but I'd be like, okay, I ate, I went to the bathroom. And I'd go back to like that same spot on the floor and just like lie down and go back to daydreaming. So it was interfering with daily life. Now, my daily life was clearly full of lots of difficult situations that were interfering with my mental health. But so it's hard for me to always say like it's maladaptive because it's like what was really the maladaptive thing? Was it me daydreaming or was it the situation that I was in that was really a maladaptive situation? That situation was inviting a lot of strife. So another characteristic of maladaptive daydreaming is speaking and moving while daydreaming. So I would like talk out the daydream or like move my body in time with the daydream. And these daydreams tend to be very vivid and very complex and they can be a kind of like world building. So I would follow like a storyline all the way through for sometimes like a couple weeks. That was like a single daydream
Weeks? Really?
storyline.
That's week.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Okay, I'm curious about all this. I'm just absorbing.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. So I think most people's daydreams are pretty quick, but like, I mean,
Yeah.
I was not like I was on the floor for weeks, but I'm saying the same daydream would be like it would be that full storyline from beginning to end. I still do that, but I don't do it in a way that interferes with my ability to just like go through day to day life. So that's
Does
maladaptive
it
daydreaming
turn
in a
on and
nutshell.
off for you? Is it like a does it turn on and off for you, or is it kind of like a mindset that you get into, and then like you mentioned, like you'll be on the floor and then you like go to the bathroom. So like, does you'll be daydreaming, get up, go to the bathroom, not daydream during the bathroom break, and then go back to daydreaming? That's how I'm understanding it, or
I think because I don't currently have this to the point that it would be diagnosable anymore. But looking back, most likely I would be like there's like different states of being in a daydream. Like there's the fully immersive state, and then there's like an in and out, like, oh, I'm still thinking about the characters or thinking about this element of the daydream, but I am able to like talk with other people and like go to the bathroom and like go grab a snack. So I
are you
most
like
likely wasn't
are you
like, do
are you
turn it
physically
off,
talking to
but
them?
like
Like can I hear you talk to them, or is it all in your head?
so if I were acting it out, like to myself, like usually when I'm by myself, I would actually be like whisper talking or talking the different lines and the storyline. Yeah. So like if a person was like in the daydream was like about to go through like a terrible experience perhaps or like I would be like, what am I supposed to do? How do I move forward from this? Like I would like say the line out loud. Yeah.
Wow, that's guess we could all relate to an extent that we all daydream before, but it seems for you, it seems much more intense. I know from doing research, it's based on it's based on a person having a lot of trauma, anxiety, and panic attacks. That's just a way for you to escape and feel really good. So if you're having to have it so often, then it just seems like just I like when I went on your social media page and you just describing all your terrible events you had. It's like I just felt so bad for you because like I don't. I mean, I don't really know you as a person. I just met you like 40 minutes ago, but I don't think you're like a bad person that deserves any bad thing that should have that happened to you. Like it should have never happened to you. And it's like,
Yeah, I guess because it was a while ago, I now have like time in between it. But when I was going through those things, it was extremely difficult. And I am very glad to be where I am at today and in the place that I'm at today. Because back then, yeah, I guess it does sound pretty sad for someone to be like lying on a floor for 12 hours. But, those were like the best parts of my day, like was when I was daydreaming. So, and that daydreaming world and that imagination world is still very important to me. I just don't experience it, quote unquote, maladaptively anymore. And then
I mean,
depersonalization, derealization. Oh,
yeah, no, continue your depersonalization. Let's hear about that.
yes, a depersonalization, derealization disorder is a dissociative disorder, not to be confused with dissociative identity disorder. So it's different from DID. It is marked by depersonalization and derealization experiences that are beyond what typically would occur for someone who didn't have this disorder. So most people do experience moments of depersonalization or derealization once in a blue moon, but to have it characterized as a disorder, it would be very consistent, very constant. So I am currently stable in this condition, and actually when I start to feel the condition like return, it's actually helpful for me in a way because I can be like, oh, something's not going on well in my life. Like something is stressing me out way too much. I need to cut back. I need to give myself a break. Otherwise, I'm going to destabilize and wind up in another state where this is much more permanent or much more consistent. So what is it though? Depersonalization, I sometimes get these mixed up, but I hope I get it right this time. Depersonalization is when I no longer feel like I'm in my body and I have out of body experiences. So I'll view the world from like a third person perspective or like an omniscient perspective. It is it's something that people have every once in a blue moon, like I said, where you're like, whoa, that was kind of weird. And be like, that was like a really strange moment. But for me, it was something that I was experiencing quite frequently. So I would just be like walking back to my dorm room in college, and I would feel like I was up as high as the moon and like watching the whole experience completely out of body. And it was it was concerning. It felt strange. It did not feel good to me, but it felt better than a lot of the other awful things that were going on in my life at the time. I can say that now retrospectively, but at the time it was just like eerie. It just felt very eerie. Derealization is the feeling that life isn't real. So I often felt as though life was not happening, that it maybe was all a dream and I would wake up one day a completely different person, or like maybe I wasn't even alive at all. Maybe I was just like a program, like all the different possible ways like that science fiction has made life not real. Like imagine
No, no.
actually like really sitting with those and being like, what if that's the truth that feels more real to me than this idea that life could be real. And I had some things that I knew that they were like definitely triggers. So, for example, if I thought about a car and someone driving a car, like say there's like a busy street with lots of cars, if I tried to think about how there were people inside of all of those cars, I would immediately dissociate and be like, how is that possible? Life isn't real. And I would be like having an out of body experience. And then, of course, if I was having stressful times as well, but it wasn't always, it could become so pervasive that it wasn't just like, I'm really stressed, I'm going to dissociate. It was like, there's cars on the road, I'm going to dissociate. Like, it was so constant. And so that's what Daniel is experiencing in Boy at the Window, this book here.
Yeah, you got it. There you
He
go.
has, yes, he has depersonalization, derealization disorder, and maladaptive daydreaming.
Yeah, so I'm gonna talk a little bit to give you a break. I have here the what the book is about. After jumping off the roof of his house in the middle of the night, Daniel Kim wakes up far from Neverland, one of Lauren's favorite words. His rep- his rep- his reprieve from the real world, thrust into a mental health hospital and then into a brand new high school. He struggles to hold on to reality while haunted by both his very present past and his never present parents. But when he joined Cranbrook Preparatory cross country team, he starts to feel like he's walking on his own 2 feet again. He meets Ji-Won Yoon, another cross country runner who may be the first person to join Daniel in his Neverland dreams, or maybe Ji-Won is the one who will finally break Daniel free. So, how close is this autobiography to your life? Like, did you have a best friend that like helped you get to where you are now?
Oh, that's a really interesting question. My stories are not generally very autobiographical unless like except for like in those smaller ways. So like I have
Mm-hmm.
experienced depersonalization, derealization, and maladaptive daydreaming. That was not focused in on Neverland, like ever. I love Neverland, but that was not one of my go-to places. And I am multiracial. Daniel is biracial. So there are definitely different things that I do bring some of my experience into, but not entirely. And well, of course, there are a few people in my life who have been very supportive of me. I don't feel as though there was a person for me that was like G1 for Daniel. In a lot of ways, I had to really make a lot of shifts on my own. And one of the big shifts that I made on my own was getting my autism diagnosis. And I think that was really the final thing that got me to let go of coping with the world through depersonalization and derealization on a psychological level. I was able to also get the supports that I needed to where I didn't have to cope constantly by doing that. So Daniel is not autistic canonically, although there are many folks who like to say that Daniel's autistic. It doesn't bother me when they do. But he's not canonically autistic. His struggles stem from childhood trauma and recent trauma. And while I have experienced trauma, it's not exactly the same as what Daniel experienced either.
So is it more of just a book just to write about the depersonalization and the what's the other one called?
Derealization,
Yeah. So is it more
maladaptive
about that?
daydreaming.
Does it have anything to do with the daydream that you were experiencing when you were younger? Like I just thought
I
that maybe the daydream has helped you in a creative aspect to be able to give you these amazing stories, or am I just, or no?
No, you're so right. You're so right. So, Boy at the Window was a story that I imagined in a month as an adult. So, I wouldn't say it was maladaptively, but it was just more adaptive. Adaptive daydreaming. I did come up with the entire storyline through daydreaming, and I guess it's pretty meta to be daydreaming a story about a character that's daydreaming, but that didn't occur to me at the time.
Yeah.
So definitely my stories that I write come from my daydreams, which is why I would never want to let that imaginary world go. It's such an important world to me. And you can even see in Daniel's experience, if when you read the book, that his daydreams are so necessary. It's not as though like it's like we just got to get him to stop daydreaming and then he's going to be better. It's not like that at all. It's like think it's almost like thank goodness he has this place that he can go, because where else is he going to go? Kind of thinking. So in a lot of ways, I wanted to destigmatize these this disorder and this maladaptive daydreaming and show that when we classify people as disordered, we're really letting everyone else off the hook in a lot of ways and blaming this person for what's been done and what's currently being done to them. So I really wanted to explore that, especially in a way that touched on the LGBTQ community, because it is a queer novel, and show those intersections and really be upfront with them, upfront about it. I think the last thing I would want to say about that is I wanted to talk about the destigmatizing of this in terms of connecting myself to the neurodivergent community outside of me being an autistic person. Because neurodiversity is so vast and it includes more than autism and ADHD. And I wanted to position this protagonist as a neurodivergent person, someone with a different neurotype for different reasons, and that pathologizing of them was not going to make them better. Yes, Daniel needs support, and yes, Daniel needs therapy, and he does need medication, and that's okay. But just saying that he's abnormal would never solve his problems, because his problems aren't his alone.
Well, I have a personal question for you. So since we were talking earlier that like you're able to control your environment more and you have more boundaries and just let people go and such, and you're able to establish your home as most comfortable to you as possible and work too. So would that help a lot with your depersonalization and other disorders because you're having less stress in your life, or is it a step more of like you need to go with therapy and take medicine to combat that too?
Oh. So I was receiving therapy in undergrad that was focused around the depersonalizing and the derealizing, and that's how I actually really like learned that I have it. And I would say had it, but because I know that it is a cyclical thing and that I can destabilize, I still say I have it, even though I haven't experienced it in its intensity for a long time. And there was a moment in therapy, I remember one of my therapists said to me that we could explore the depersonalization, the derealization, and talk about ways for me to do it less, to experience it less. But she said, she said to me, but you're gonna have to want that. Like you're gonna have to want to depersonalize and less and to derealize less. Like you're gonna have to want to find a different kind of coping strategy. Otherwise, we're not going to be able to actually work through this, because if this is if this is your go-to strategy, then we can't really do much beyond that, because it's not like she can reach into my brain and make me stop doing something. And
Yeah.
I actually told her that I didn't want to stop, that it was the only thing that I really felt was working for me. So I did receive some treatment later on after that, and I did go on anxiety medication for a short period of time. I really needed it for that short period of time, and I think it was after that time where I had more clarity to think through what wasn't working in my life and build some new coping strategies that weren't focusing on the depersonalization, derealization. It was from that time that I was able to really start moving forward. And then, like I said, when I received my autism diagnosis and I was able to even more like control my environment and set boundaries and build in supports and self-understanding, that was when it was like, okay, it's gone. Like it feels gone in a lot of ways, although like I said, it can creep back up.
Yeah, make it feel how it is, how difficult it was. Like it's like a warm blanket, and you don't want anybody to take the blanket away from you. So I understand why you wouldn't want to switch your coping mechanism because on one hand, it sounds really awesome to be, but understand that it is not a normal, I guess, coping mechanism and can really wreak havoc on your life. So what did you substitute your so what did you substitute the coping mechanism with? So like what is the healthier alternative for you that you chose?
Well, I think one of the first things is exiting situations that are difficult for me, like acknowledging
Okay.
that this is sensorily difficult or socially difficult and exiting. Whereas before I wouldn't exit. I would feel like I'm supposed to endure. I'm supposed to push through and be
Mm,
like quote unquote normal. So then the response to that would be winding up depersonalizing or derealizing. If not in that moment, then after the fact. So starting to actually just set those boundaries and exit the sensory things as well, so that my like having a better sensory environment so that my stress levels are down. So if I'm under a ton of stress from sensory overload or sensory overstimulation, then when I experience stressful things, since I'm already up here, like already up so high with the stress, I'm just gonna like go way over, way over with too much stress, and then I'll just jump straight to depersonalizing or derealizing instead of being able to, keep the stress levels down. And then maybe if I encounter something stressful, then I can do deep breathing. I can go for a walk. I can listen to some music. I can stem. A big thing is stemming. So before, when I was younger, I used to stem a lot. I used to suck my fingers, spin and twirl, jump up and down, clap my hands. A lot of stimming. Around sixth grade, receiving pressure from family, pressure from adults, and bullying from my peers, I completely stopped stimming in ways that were healthier for me. And I started doing negative stimming behaviors, like hurting myself through my stems in discreet ways that other people couldn't see. So that's going to lead to more depersonalizing and more derealizing if I'm inflicting self-harm upon myself. Now I don't do any of those stems anymore. I've reclaimed my healthier, happier stems. Like throughout our conversation, I've been like moving this chair, thank goodness for this chair, keeps me moving and rocking back and forth. I also have been like, hitting my nails a lot. Those are smaller ones that people consider to be more quote unquote appropriate. When I'm with my safer people or I'm alone, I'll really rock back and forth. I'll jump up and down. I start dancing very repetitively and doing other stems that are much better for me and make me feel much better and help me to express my emotions. Before I had cut that off completely. So reclaiming that, I would say, has been an extremely important replacement coping strategy.
yeah, so you have another book that you have written that will be released soon. But now the question is, do you go back? It's kind of tricky because like you say like your first book was based on your uh, dreams that you were having, the dream that you were having earlier. So now that you're in a much different mind state and a much healthier mind state, does it hurt you when you want to write new things because now you're more reliant and not on like more real life stuff? If that makes sense. Like, do you
So
ever
when I
want to
wrote Boy at the Window,
daydream
I
sometimes?
wasn't when I broke Boy at the Window, I was still daydreaming, but I wasn't maladaptive daydreaming. So I haven't done
Okay.
maladaptive daydreaming for a really long time now. It also stabilized with the depersonalization, derealization. So I still daydream all the time. I love
Okay.
daydreaming. It's never going away. It's about whether or not it's interfering with my day-to-day life, right? So
Okay.
I daydream every day, maybe sometimes if I fall asleep really fast, like it'll only be for 10 minutes. Sometimes I daydream for up to like 3 hours in a day. So I absolutely love daydreaming. It's a very, very important thing for me. And I do think it's also a healthy coping thing so long as it doesn't interfere. So yeah, I daydream all of my stories. Any story I write is the result of a daydream or a series of daydreams.
So I mean, realistically, you could have like hundreds and hundreds of stories, right?
Oh my gosh, I have so many stories that I will never write. So many. My partner really loves stories, And so I will often tell her my stories that I never write. And she'll be like, "Do I get an update today?" Like, she'll ask me, "What about today? Do you have an update?" Be like, "Yeah, I can update you today." So like, we'll sit down for like 30 minutes and I'll like update her on what's going on in my brain.
So you basically like have like a movie going on in your head and you like stop and go and stop. Like how do you know when like a daydream like story ends, like a new one begins? Like do you just tell your brain like, hey, we're moving on to like a whole new like movie, or it's like how does it work? Like I'm so fascinated by this.
Sometimes I will just be like, okay, this story's done. I would like to think of a new story now. Sometimes I'll bring it to like a really full, like theatrical ending. Sometimes I'll just logically think through how it would end and move on. So it depends on how I'm feeling connected to a specific story.
I
Yeah.
mean, it's pretty cool that you're just like able to like change like the plot, like you know, like when you're watching like a show on TV, and you're not like liking the way the writer is like making the show go towards, you know, like they kill the main character, but like for you, you're like literally in control, like so you can save everyone, you can just like kill like the main character and just replace it and like keep the story going, which is really cool. Like it's amazing
Yeah,
just
you
to
know what's
hear.
really fun is I could kill a character. I could kill a character and then I could change my mind and bring them back to life and just rewind the
No,
story. I've done
no, that's too much power. You
that.
can't do that though. No, you can't do that. You gotta like go with
I
it.
can do that. It's my brain.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, you should totally just write all. I mean, that would probably take you forever to write all your things, but like, I mean, do you do you feel like your daydream is yourself, or do you kind of feel like it's wait? Well, another question I have is that when you daydream, so you're not in it at all. You're just watching it unfold, right? Or is it a mixture?
Yeah, I am not in it at all. I am
Mm,
0% present in my daydreams. I will often hop into like the perspective of different characters, but it's not
mm.
me. Like, and nobody looks like me, and nobody acts like me at all.
Ah,
I mean, I'm sure
that's
they act like me a
so.
little bit because I'm making it up, but it's not supposed to be me.
Wow, so are you saying like your head is like just full of so many stories, or do you just kind of like forget like your younger stories and just keep replacing with newer stories?
Some of my younger stories I can remember, but I definitely forget a lot of the stories. If I brought a story all the way from beginning to end and it took me like several months to parse out and had like a really massive like finale, then like I'll usually remember that story.
Um, I mean, to me that is a lot of power to wield. Like, like you know how
Power.
like people have like smoke. You know how like people have smoke breaks. Like you just have like you're gonna literally go to like another world and like that's crazy. Like I mean, more power to you that you're able to control it and live a relatively good life too.
Thanks.
Yeah,
But
so that's,
what's interesting is that Boy at the Window, right? It's about like a character who is daydreaming about a fantastical world, and then Gimmicks and Glamour, which is coming up in August. That person is actually living in a fantastical world, but no one else can see it except her. And so everyone thinks that she is unwell or making it up. And even she wonders if she is seeing the things that she sees. So, Gimmicks and Glamour for me is, while it never actually mentions neurodiversity and neurological differences in the way that Boy at the Window does, Gimmicks and Glamour for me feels much more about that neurodivergent experience of seeing and walking through the world in a completely different way. And everyone says you're wrong. But what if you're right? And that's really the way the world is. And how would you know that you're right if everyone's telling you that you're wrong? So that's that's what Gimmicks and Glamour is about, like highbrow wise, but on the on the surface it's just about a high school girl who's kind of a bad girl, party girl, and she has a best friend who's also kind of a bad girl, and they end up embarking on a mission to save all of the people that they hate from fairies that no one else can see.
So is this another one of your stories that you have daydreamed that you ran all the way through basically in your daydreams?
Yeah, definitely. I actually remember when I came up with the idea for it, I was going to a wedding and I was really stressed out because that's definitely not the kind of thing that I really enjoy doing,
Yeah, of course.
even though I want to be there for my friends. And I had drank some espresso so that way I would be awake for the wedding. But then I wound up being like super tired anyway. So I went and laid down in the hotel bed and I was like, go to sleep. But then I was like, or just daydream. So then I decided to start
Oh no.
daydreaming and I could hear the protagonist, Ashley from Gimmicks and Glamour, talking in my head. And she was it's the opening scene now that I actually had to rewrite, but the opening scene is she was just like talking to an imaginary audience and being like, I'm angry all the time, and it's okay for me to be angry because the whole world is screwed up. And she's just very, very in your face and very much more like powerful than most of my protagonists. And so I just started hearing her voice and daydreaming her life and the fairies that she was seeing, and it was really cool. And I just popped up out of out of the bed after like an hour and I just turned to my partner and I was like, I just thought of a whole story. Like I just thought of a whole new story and it was really exciting. That doesn't
So
usually
like
happen like that.
so like how so like how does it work for you? So like do you so like let's say the day of the wedding that you woke up and you like, hey, I have a new story to like, do you like write it down and then like you daydream some more and then you write down what happened in the last daydream and you keep doing it, or is it kind of like you let a couple of weeks go and then you like write and then like how like the writing process for you?
Yeah, so I actually, after that time, I wrote like two chapters and then I just stopped writing it and I went back into like daydreams and I was daydreaming other stories and then I returned to that story and I went back. So I wrote Gimmicks and Glamour in like maybe three chunks, three or four chunks of time where I return to that story. Now, that's not always typical. So there are other stories that I have written or are writing that I've already imagined the whole thing from start to finish. Gimmicks and Glamour is a little bit different for me than other stories. And but what is really the central crux here is that almost all of my stories are related to my autistic special interests. So,
Hmm.
my special interests are things that I really just center my life around in general. Like I want to read books about it, I want to be talking about it, I want to play games that somehow touch on my special interests, and I want to daydream about my special interests all the time. So, I guess this is just what happens when the daydreams that I have about my special interests, sometimes I write them down and they become a novel. But that doesn't mean that all my daydreams about my special interests will be novels, but they are still so important to me.
I mean, you kind of have a money mind like, to be an author. Like, I feel like that's the best case scenario for any person that wants to write, right? Just you can create stories and masterpieces, really.
Oh, that's kind. Thank you for saying that.
I mean,
I'm
I
just
hope they're
happy anybody
masterpieces.
could
I
read
don't
them and
know.
enjoy them.
Yeah, I mean, yeah. I mean, this is the first time. I mean, I kind of knew about it that people have it, but the first person that talked to about it is really fascinating. I can understand how it could be detrimental to you, but like you have seemed to have mastered it, and like you're using it to your full potential, and like I would never want to leave the daydream either. Like life sucks sometimes. The world's hard.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, but luckily my life has gotten a little bit better, so it's good to leave the daydreams here and there. Yeah.
Yeah, so before I take the mic away from you, is there anything you want to say, promote, any words of wisdom, the winning lottery numbers? The mic is all yours.
I just want to say that one of the main reasons why I write young adult fiction is so that teens who are like me can see themselves reflected in books that, and I didn't have access to that when I was young. So I really hope that neurodivergent folks of all ages, but especially young adults, can connect with my protagonists, see themselves in those people, and enjoy the story. So please, you can find me on social media at Autinel. You can find my novels anywhere books are sold. So please support Gimmicks and Glamour. It comes out in August of this year. And thank you so much for having me, Joe. This was a really great conversation, a really great time.
Of course. Just a heads up, this episode won't be released to probably like in September, so I'm just gonna say,
Okay.
so I'll just when the book comes out, I'm gonna still follow you. So once that link comes out, I'll just put in the description below so people can just buy it. It should be available. But yeah, so
Thank you.
thank you, Lauren, so much for giving me your time and expertise. I really love this conversation. If you want to follow her and buy her old book or new books, or maybe the hundreds of other books she'll be releasing in the future, who knows, you know? It's all be in the description below. Thank you everyone for listening, and then I'll see everyone next time. Bye!